This project, we're detecting scenes in a database of films. So basically, we're going to be trying to detect scenes, which has applications for video editing, when you search and retrieve segments, and ratings assignments, and personalization of content. So in particular, we're going to be focusing on detecting kissing as one type of scene. And the way we're going to do this is to have a two-component system. First, we extract 1-second segments from a movie, and then we feed each one of these segments into a binary classifier, get our labels for kissing or not kissing, then use an aggregation layer to create basically non-overlapping segments of kissing. The data set we're working with is a 2.3 terabyte database of 600 movies, and they span multiple decades, and they cover a broad range of genres and resolutions, which gives us pretty good generalization power. So we've hand selected some of these kissing segments and non-kissing segments, and they have a variety of different ranges in terms of length. And we have the typical train validation and test partitions. So the first component, the binary classifier, is basically extracting from each one of these 1-second segments a patch of image, the last still from the 1-second segment, and also a patch of audio, which is taking the audio wave, taking it through a Fourier transform and integrating into Mel space frequency bins, which produces a 96 by 64 patch that basically looks like an image. We feed this into an architecture called VGG-ish. It's inspired by VGG and processes audio spectrograms. So the output of both of these networks is concatenated into a 640-dimensional tensor, and then we feed that into a fully connected layer and produce our binary labels. So the second component is a segmenting algorithm. Basically, we get each one of these 1-second label predictions and try to find longest segments that have at least some fraction of kissing segments. So in this example, we were enforcing a 75% minimum of kissing segments, and you see that the longest ones are looking like this. So we trained this network for 10 epochs and using cross-entropy loss and Atom, and we achieved a 0.95 validation F1, which means that we have a pretty accurate classifier. So looking at basically saliency maps here, we see that the model is doing a pretty good job focusing on what's important, faces, but also because of the way, as an artifact of the way that we're cropping out images, randomly getting the images out, you see that sometimes we're feeding bad data to the model, which is causing confusion. So we ran two sets of experiments. So one is an ablation study. So we want to understand the contribution of the feature extractors for both the audio and the image. So basically what we're seeing here is both of them are pretty important, but it turns out that the ResNet, which is doing the image extraction, is contributing more. The second set of experiments is basically sweeping over architectures and hyperparameters. We've tried DenseNet as well as ResNet 18 layers with a number of different learning rates, and either doing training of all parameters or just the last layer. And we see that ResNet is doing much better than DenseNet. Also, we experimented with 3D versions of ResNet at a 34-layer depth, and we noticed that this doesn't do as well, and our hypothesis is that this is probably because that we're not going as deep with in the temporal depth.